Joining us now is Dr. Wendy Goodson from the Air Force Research Laboratory. Dr. Goodson, it's great to be speaking with you. Thanks for joining us.
Great to speak to you too.
We are talking about synthetic biology. It's somewhat of an emerging field. In fact, it was a late addition to the symposium at this meeting. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is synthetic biology?
Synthetic biology is the application of engineering principles to biology. It's a merging of biological engineering, chemical engineering, computational science, and mixing all those things together in order to make living systems into programmable things that you can do things with. So make new materials, make components of materials. It really is an extension of traditional biotechnology, but it takes it one step further because we can program biology in ways that we never have been able to before.
Let's talk specifically then about your symposium. What did you talk about? What points did you want to bring across to the audience?
I think our symposium really wants to do two things. It's to educate the materials science community as to the power of synthetic biology and what kind of tool it is that can be useful to the materials science community. It's also a way to engage people within that community to come in and start a discussion between the biologists, the biological engineers, and the material scientists to see how they can work together to make synthetic biology work for materials. And what I mean by that is that there are many parts of biology that can bring specific molecules, specific chemistries to the discussion of material science, to take material science one leap further, to provide R groups, chemical moieties, chiralities, all that kind of stuff that you can get through biology that you can't get through traditional chemical synthesis. And so once we bring in the material science community into that discussion, it expands the palette of the different types of molecules and chemistries that a material scientist can be able to use for their research. But without that cross-disciplinary discussion that we hope to enable through our symposium, those fields are going to remain separate.
You're looking to integrate.
Absolutely.
So in your call for papers, you specifically state a purpose of introducing material science community to the potential of synthetic biology. How important is a cross-disciplinary approach to advancing the field?
It's extremely important. At AFRL, in the Materials and Manufacturing Directorate where I sit, we're lucky enough to have biomaterials scientists right next to traditional material scientists who look at coatings and resins and energetics and composite materials. And it really hasn't been until recently when we've sat in a room with these people and with literally a list of chemicals that you can get made through biology, given that to them, put that in front of them, and they've said, oh my gosh, you can make that with biology? I could use that for this composite material that I'm trying to make over here. So it's so important to bring those communities together to talk about the potential for what biology can bring to the material science community.
Now, what are some of the most promising developments to date in the field of synthetic biology?
So I think some of the most promising developments are our ability to what we call read and write DNA very cheaply and very quickly. And so what that gets us is we can determine what a DNA sequence looks like and then iterate that in many different ways. So we can make many different types of DNA that can give us different chemistries in the long run for the materials that we're making on the back end. Because we can do that in a massively parallel way, we have the ability to literally program different chemistries, different molecules that are coming out of an organism. In addition to that, on the front end of that, we can control the timing of that synthesis so that whereas before we might have trouble with the toxicity of these chemicals, or controlling the patterning of how these materials were being secreted, we now have much tighter control over that part of the process.
Now I want you to look into your crystal ball. What are some of the more promising developments in the near future? And on the same side of that, what are the obstacles perhaps moving forward?
One of the biggest obstacles is getting these communities to talk to one another, realizing that the biologists need to be able to convey what the biology can do to the material scientists and vice versa. And there needs to be an open enough discussion that we can realize that biology can do some parts but not all, and chemical synthesis can do some parts, not all. Now, even if you wed those two things together, we have another issue, which is that material science and the creation of new materials is as much about synthesizing that thing as about post-processing and making and manufacturing that material. And so that part of that pipeline is also something that needs attention, because in synthetic biology we now have incredible throughput, the ability to make things, to iterate on chemistries at scale. And there's always going to be a pinch point in that pipeline. In this case, you can make things at scale, but you have to be able to characterize them and process them at scale too, so that you get to know at the end of the day what the most important DNA structure, the most important protein structure was in order to enable the synthesis of that material. And so finding the pinch points in that pipeline, being able to do characterization and processing and higher throughput, which is something that the larger material science community is interested in, and having that wedded to the synthetic biology is going to be the most important thing forward for moving forward for synthetic biology for materials.
Dr. Wendy Goodson, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.